views. They're pretty good. Everyone likes to have a nice view. My neighbourhood has a pretty great view of the city. It can be a bit hit and miss though when it comes to getting a nice view. Sometimes there can be trees, or brutalist architecture, or maybe a horse, or a very tall man. In the case of my home office, the view is obscured by one very tall tree. You might call it a rogue tree, a frustratingly centered, tall, rogue tree. Just to paint the picture for you, in case this actual picture doesn't do that somehow, the tree is obscuring a good 3/5 of the city. That's 70-something% of viable city view. All the most interesting bits are in the middle, and probably the nicest bits. You can walk one house to the left or the right and you're back to something out of a John Farnham painting. But if you look at the city from the focal point of my office window, all you see is tree. And I know some people would say, hey man, that's a first world problem. Well, I'll stop you there. I think anyone in any tax bracket could agree that if you go to the barber shop and ask for a haircut and they only do the sideburns, you should only have to pay that's just not a good haircut. If you go and get a haircut and they only do 3/5, then you just got taken for a ride. Not a good ride, like the Sizzler. A bad ride, like the Gravitron. I can't stop thinking about this tree. It lives rent-free in my mind, day and night, as well as my window. Look, I know trees aren't sentient, but this one is very obnoxiously placed. So then I started thinking, what would it take to cut this tree down? I'm not authorised to cut down a tree on council land, so I'd have to do it very, very quietly. A chainsaw would obviously be too loud. A regular saw, too difficult. Would I climb up and lop it off halfway? Would I chop it at the bottom with one of those notchy things that log guys do? Now, the number one rule of stealth tree removal is never wake the neighbours. The number 2 rule is never fall in love. Rule number 3, there are no rules. Rule number 4, always wake the neighbours. We think that's a misprint. I did consider hiring some local tree removalists to come in and do the job, but I couldn't rely on them being stupid enough to think this was my home. Even if I'd set up maybe some sort of portable cubby house and a fake swimming pool, if one of them asked to come in and use the toilet, my ruse would be exposed. I could maybe dress up as a council member and hire the tree loppers, but what if they knew who the council was? Or what if they used some sort of council lingo that I didn't understand and they immediately recognised that this was all a huge fraud to remove the tree? And what are the penalties like for impersonating a member of council? I assume there's slightly less than impersonating a member of parliament, and probably more than impersonating a member of the village gold club card to avoid going through the zigzag line. But then I thought, no, let's do the honest thing. Let's call my council member directly, pretending to be several members of my community who are angry at the tree for some reason. on the top of the tree and throwing bloody sticks at my dogs. Yeah, sticks, if you can believe that. Well, you can, because it's a tree, isn't it? The sticks are going so fast because the tree's so bloody high. Throwing sticks at everyone's dogs, some dogs are going to get hurt, mate. I want you to either chop the tree in half. As I continued day after day, week after week, month after month, to get the council to come around to my fictional neighbourhood's way of thinking, something began to dawn on me. Perhaps there was an ecosystem like I was describing at the top of this tree. Bats, possums, squirrels, centipedes, birds, even feral cats had all begun to call this tree home long before I moved into the neighbourhood. Maybe I was the asshole in this situation and didn't even realised it obviously, but not as much as I was now. And what's more, those animals had every right to sit at the top of the tree throwing things at people's dog. And so I ended my campaign to have the tree removed there, knowing that eventually the council will probably sell the land to a developer who will replace the tree with a large apartment block. Although I'd set out on a path destructive to nature, ultimately I came to appreciate it. I wanted to hug every animal in that tree. But would I climb it? Would I scare away a lot of the animals? Anyway, long story short, I appreciate trees now and all of the nature that they support, such as squirrels, possums, numbats, wombats, maybe. How about normal bats? And birds, or, as they're sometimes called, day bats. How about mushrooms? No, that's not really one. Anyway, long story short, I was happy to leave the matter alone because ultimately I lost interest. And that's why to me, every day is Arbor Day. And because I don't know when Arbor Day actually is.